All right, it is my pleasure to welcome back to the show our good friend from the Tulane Radio Network. He is Cory Gloor, who's coming off what an impressive broadcast. We played Cory, of course. We give to Tulane Radio Network credit for the safety call and the game-winning touchdown call. You and, of course, your partner Steve Barrios doing that as Tulane wins the Cotton Bowl, a New Year's 6 gem. Cory, great to have you back.
Thank you, Jeff. You keep on having me. I'm going to start asking you for commission at this point. But
you're now the unofficial co-host of the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
and all I can offer you is guaranteed health and happiness for the rest of your life. So that's
I'll take that. I'll definitely take the health of late. I've been battling it, but no. It's always fun having being a part of your show here, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you for being back once again, and let's talk about this. This was such a crazy game. USC Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, so they were tough in a handful on offense. But the Green Wave kept battling back time and time again, including obviously the big fourth quarter rally, which was just absolutely ridiculous. Give me your encapsulation of all that.
It still doesn't quite feel like it happened, and I think it'll sink in here. It's what's been weird here in New Orleans is that the attention is strong, and Willie Fritz is going everywhere right now and doing a ton of things, and the city has really just latched on to this group, and the Cotton Bowl win is certainly the apex of that. But what students aren't back on campus yet. A lot of the team had left right after the game to have a little bit of a break before the semester started. And so, we haven't actually had a moment together to celebrate it, as a triumph here, because nobody's back on campus yet. And so next week, when the semester starts and there's a celebration planned already for next weekend, I think that's when it's really going to sink into most people just what happened. I don't know if it'll ever sink in how it happened, but the fact that it did is actually going to start reverberating through this campus and through this city, I think, starting next week.
So that might be bigger than Mardi Gras, huh?
Well, I don't know about that, but it's certainly going to add an extra flair to
it. That's for sure. So, I'm looking back at this game, and the one thing that stood out to me, which, only odd things stick out to me normally. So I look at this great comeback, and what's totally lost in that was the failed onside kick where they were down 5. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that could have very well been the end there.
I had a chance to sit down with Coach Fritz like the one day he was still in town. I think it was last Thursday, and I got to chat with him for a good hour just about the game for the podcast I do here. And he mentioned that kick, and you're right, it's easy to forget about that now. And it was also easy to forget that Casey Glover, who kicked that ball, he was unreal at onside kicks the year before, and that was not his best effort at that. He kicked it right to a red shirt. And so I think there was a desperation there. It was very clear, especially that came after a failed 2-point try that they tried a little trickeration on that. But Coach Fritz even said, like, had we kicked it deep, and USC did what they were doing all game, just drove it down the field, but took longer to do it because they had a longer field to work with, then do we have the 3:10 to work with there after the safety to drive down the field and score with 9 seconds left? Or is that time going to be gone? Like it's stuff like that you can look back on and say, well, it didn't work. Coach Fritz even said he probably shouldn't have kicked the onside kick there, but had they kicked it deep, they weren't stopping USC. That was evident all night long. But had they kicked it deep, there was going to be far less time to work with for the rest of the game. So an onside not working, actually, you can kind of knock the dominoes down and realize, you know what, that actually could have lent a hand here to Tulane having time at the end to win that game and not give USC any chance to win it on their own.
Yeah, and then of course they get the kickoff where the ball goes out of bounds, the 1 yard line off the USC player, and boy, if you're going to have a chance to stop them, having them their necks back on their goalpost was a great opportunity, and that safety was just, you really felt the tide turn on that.
Yeah, that was the moment. I mean, the safety is. I actually, I've listened to that call since, and that's one of the calls that we've released here from Tulane, where you can see us in the booth reacting to it, and you can actually see me remember that. Oh, not only did we just get 2 points off of that, made it a 6-point game, but we're going to get the ball. Like I remembered the rule, like as the calls happens, like, oh, that's right. We're about to get the ball back here. Like, and so the best way to stop Caleb Williams is to not have him on the field. And that allowed that to occur. That kickoff that was fumbled out of bounds, as not good as the onside was, that's how good of a kick that was for Casey Glover, because it's kind of a draw in golf. It was just kind of hook into the left a little bit, and it was a lot trickier to handle than it looked on television. But that's about as good of a kick as Casey Glover's had all year. And the time for it was, monumental. And then 2 plays later, the safety that will live in lore here at Tulane. And, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about the rest of the game here. But yeah, it's just all these little moments that fans are now kind of looking back on and trying to encapsulate, like, oh, this happened because of this happened because of this. It's been a lot of fun to dissect this over the last week and a half.
Yeah, those are great videos, by the way, that you guys have released on social media, and just seeing your guys' reactions as you're calling the game. I mean, that's one of the great things to be about radio play-by-play is you are the fans reaction. You're their temperature, you're their eyesight in a lot of cases, even if they sync you up with the TV,
right?
It's like getting to ride shotgun with you guys.
Yeah, and it's what I've loved about it. I've never been one to kind of like watching myself. I don't like hearing myself, let alone watching myself. And so I've had to get over that as the years gone on. But to see my broadcast partner and his reactions from that game, and Steve Barrios, that was his 40th season in the booth that he just closed up here this year. And on that game, our statistician was there, Alden Hagedorn, and he was closed up his 29th year in the Tulane radio booth. And they've seen a lot of bad in that radio booth. And Steve played at Tulane, and as a Hall of Famer at the school, they have seen it all, and very little of it has been worth remembering, and they've stuck with it and refused to leave. And so to see them, celebrate the biggest win this school has ever had, is just a real treat for me as someone who's still very new to here. And it didn't feel right that I got to call that game, of the folks that have been in that booth prior to me, and some have been in that booth for a long time. But I got the opportunity, and the greatest joy I had was seeing those two guys who have been around this program for decades just get to experience the absolute high of a high that I'm not sure anyone thought this program was going to lead them to.
Yeah. And talk about the ebb and flow of emotion, as there's a touchdown pass, then it thought it was dropped, but the replay concluded, what a wave of emotion to go high, low, high in that short of span.
Yeah, I mean, it was it was a wild ride there over about the 3 minutes that review was happening. Now, it was pretty clear to us on first look on the giant video screen there in that building that it was a touchdown, but you couldn't just help but have that doubt in the back of your head that they're not gonna change this, right? Like this is not gonna come down to this. Like, they're really not gonna overrule this, especially since 2 plays before they looked at a potential targeting that seemed pretty clearly targeting on our end here, and then they said no targeting. And so there was kind of a flood there of like, all right, are they really going to get this right? Will this call that's so important hinge on this, and will they actually have the gumption to overrule it? And then, that they did. And just the explosion of sound and just delirium from that fan base there, which, boy, that they blew me away with the number of people that showed up. Where we were positioned, we didn't get a full appreciation of how many Tulane fans were there until after the game and the trophy ceremony was happening. The USC fans had cleared out. And so we got to look down and then look around, and we saw how many people were still there. And that's, it would have crushed the Yeoman Stadium record. Like it was special. And it's fitting for everything Tulane football has navigated through. And a lot of it was being brought up heading into this game with leaving the SEC on their own accord, and the multiple times the school tried to get rid of football, including the early 2000s, pretty recently. A lot of plight for Tulane football. It felt fitting that the biggest touchdown maybe ever was under review and took some drama, and you had the ebbs and flows to it. There was something very Tulane about that in my mind, that it needed to get dissected and needed to hinge on the hook there and finally get overturned and have that explosion of sound. So it felt very Tulane that touchdown grab by Alex Bauman took a long time to finally confirm.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the fan base, because I was going to get to that as well, because I thought that was, everybody's talked about Tulane's attendance at their home stadium and all that. But then you look at, all the years that Tulane has been around, they got alumni everywhere. Yeah. So this ended up being a great opportunity to draw a large crowd for Tulane football.
Yeah. Frankly, there are a ton of alumni in the Dallas area. And so, we knew they were going to come out. Most everyone I had spoken to here in New Orleans was planning a trip out there. I had heard, bits and pieces about people flying in from around the country, but still just the quantity of people that were there. I knew that our fan base was going to be louder just because of the fan base's interest in the game. USC was a bad second half away from being a playoff team. And so, they didn't have as much focus on a game like this as Tulane did. And so I knew that we would probably be more chaotic in terms of a fan base. I thought initially USC had more people there, but that was from our vantage point, where I was in a corner way up high and right above essentially our band. And so on our sideline, so I couldn't see above us. I couldn't see really down the sideline. And then I saw videos from people on the field, but when the touchdown got called, and just panning up, I saw videos from the press box on the other side of the stadium. And then I saw the full appreciation of just how many people were there. It was, the conference championship here felt like a moment for the city of New Orleans to kind of jump back in with Tulane. And then the Cotton Bowl felt like a moment for the fans and the alums for generations to really climb back on. And yeah, even win maybe some hearts and minds around the country too. And so it's to say this has been momentous would be an understatement for just what this means to this program.
Yeah. So what were your impressions of Caleb Williams, the Heisman Trophy winner?
Damn good. Well, we weren't stopping him. There was nothing we could do to stop him. It's even the occasional times that we would get to him in the pocket, but he would get out of it. It's what Tulane was able to do against a hampered John Rice Plumlee in the conference championship game, they couldn't do against a hampered Caleb Williams in the Cotton Bowl. And it was clear that his hamstring still wasn't right. You could tell he wasn't running downfield, and that is a huge element of what he does. But him moving laterally, him buying time, deadly. And we couldn't get to him. And then he always found his target. He always found someone. And some plays he'd had to delay to get some open. A lot of times, just quick hitters and crossing patterns would just carving up our secondary alive. There was truly nothing Tulane's defense was going to do to stop him. The only thing that they could do was keep him off the field, and they did in the final 4 minutes, and that's how they won the game. And so he's the best player I've ever seen live, and he wasn't even healthy. And so, you know, I understand why he got what he got and what, you know, and he's coming back next year. If USC figures out anything defensively, they're a national champion, because that guy is the best player I've ever seen.
Wow. That's a big statement there for, you know, I'm sure you're not the only guy who says that, but still,
right.
You know,
they also need to figure out defense, and there's no question that's a problem for them, but we'll take it because we got a Cotton Bowl off of it.
So yeah. Well, you know what? Lincoln Riley's had those kind of troubles for wherever he's coached. You know, great offense and defense is suspect. Yeah,
and we're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, you got to live an amazing experience as a broadcaster there, and of course, you're at that point, you know, especially when you get a football team in the postseason. So you've got that overlap of football and basketball, which makes you a well-traveled man in recent weeks. And of course, as we look towards this weekend, big game in the American between UCF and Tulane, both 4-1, right behind number 1 Houston. You know, this basketball conference is shaping up to be a very tough one, as we witnessed last night with UCF and Memphis going double overtime.
Madness. I no, we were in Dallas again, like with Tulane beat SMU last night, and so I wasn't able to watch it, but I was monitoring it, and I just seeing just the numbers pile up. But that game was just bonkers.
Yes, it was. So tell me about Tulane basketball. What's got them cooking it so far this year?
I mean, they're averaging about 94 points a game in conference play. I mean, it is this offense is just astounding right now. And, you know, Jalen Forbes is the conference player of the week heading into Saturday's matchup here with UCF. And he just put up 31 against SMU. He's shooting close to 60% in conference play. And this is a 3-point shooter. Like, I mean, this is drive to the bucket sort of guy. Like, he's taken, he pretty much ended the game last night with a 35-footer. I mean, he just said goodnight. Like, it's he's on a different level right now, but he's pulling down rebounds, he's dishing the ball, and you have really 4 guys on this team that offensively aren't just scoring, but they're all distributing. And Jalen Cook is the name that people remember from last year. He's had an up and down year because he's been trouble staying on the floor, both with injuries, and he's got a lot of foul trouble here in conference play. But he had 25 last night, so he looked like himself. But he also had 8 assists. And then Kevin Cross, who kind of was the centerpiece of it all offensively, he's racking up, you know, 17, 19 a night, getting 8 or 9 boards, but he's also dishing the ball around. And Sion James has taken a huge leap forward offensively. He put up 31 or 30 against Memphis in the win we had against them a few weeks ago. And he had a terrific game against Temple. He's shooting the ball a lot better, but, you know, down day against SMU, he still had 8 rebounds, 7 assists, you know, 4 blocks, like crazy numbers like that. It's an offense that is just so challenging to stop that it has allowed Tulane to, just put it simply, outshoot teams to wins here over the last week and a half. And they got a 4-game winning streak with it. They will give up looks, like they gave up looks to SMU, and UCF's 3-point shooting will be a problem for Tulane. There's no question. But with how Tulane is playing offense right now, you know, if you enjoyed that 107 to 104 Wednesday, I get the sense Tulane's going to want another game of that caliber on Saturday afternoon. I'm sure Johnny would love to get things back in the 60s where he's used to seeing it. But and if that's going to happen, then UCF's going to walk out with a win. But this Tulane offense is just deadly right now. It's a real pleasure to watch.
Yeah, no, my heart couldn't have taken a third overtime last night. It's like, it was pretty crazy nuts.
Yes.
So you mentioned, of course, yeah, this is where I envisioned Tulane getting to when they hired Ron Hunter. Because he certainly knows how to build a program and generate, recruit quality
Yeah.
players. And I kind of thought about this earlier today too. You know, this has to be a great luxury for you because you get to deal with guys like Willie Fritz and Ron Hunter, and both these guys basically bleed positivity.
Yeah. No, and they're who you see too. Like that's what has been the kicker for me is that they do completely bleed positivity. There's no question about it. But when you see Ron Hunter in his post game interviews and the jokes that he makes and the off the cuff remarks that that's him. Like that is truly him. That's not an act that he's putting on. And then when you see Willie Fritz at the Bear Bryant Award last night say that his goal of his idea of relaxing, not thinking about football, sitting by the pool and drinking natty lights, like that's him. Like I said, that's just him as a human being. Like they're genuine human beings. And so you don't have kind of the barrier that some coaches have at Division I levels, where they put up a wall and there's an act and then there's a shutdown. I don't interact with those types of coaches here, which is just a treat for me. And then when that positivity carries over to the teams and they're winning games like football did this year and like basketball is doing now, then it's just kind of top of the world stuff. And so this has been it's been a real treat here to kind of be a part of stuff this year. And now that I'm headlong into basketball, you hope that this group can kind of keep pointing north here with a dramatically tough schedule coming up here over the next week, because you guys are coming in Saturday and then we got Houston here next week. And so there's an opportunity coming up for this team to really make some noise. And if they keep playing like this, then they might be able to. And if they are able to pull that off, then Ron Hunter is going to have even more fire quotes that is going to be dropped around social media here.
Yeah. And again, I mean, obviously we know Houston, number one in the country. They're the gold standard, but
Yeah.
UCF gave Houston quite a run in their matchup in Houston, and they're going to play again in a week and a half, a little less than 2 weeks from now. And then Temple, you guys beat them, but they're 4-1 in conference.
Yeah.
And you look at what Memphis looks very capable. I mean, this conference midway up is very strong in my opinion.
Yeah, I would even go deeper than that, honestly, Jeff. And we've seen a couple of the bottom dwellers here of late in SMU and Tulsa. Now Tulsa has some things to figure out, and SMU is not too far behind them in that category. But I think even when you look down the ladder a little bit and you look at teams like South Florida gave Houston a ton of problems yesterday. And I think they're playing better, even though the wins haven't cropped up yet. Cincinnati is starting to kind of look a little bit more like that sort of Cincinnati program this year. I would even put a team like East Carolina is playing a lot better this year with the defense that they play. And so I think it's starting to go a little bit deeper this year than maybe last year. Now, last year I thought this was a 3-bid league easily, and SMU got snubbed. That the conference right now doesn't have the clout that I feel it does, and I feel people in the league feels it should. But what you have, I think, is really a group of 7 or 8 teams in this league right now that have taken a step forward from last year's team. That includes Houston. And I thought Memphis was a better team this year than they were last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as we head towards February, you're going to see kind of some bloodshed in this league, because there's not a gimme. There's not a layup here in this conference. Even a team like Tulsa has a big man that just is a force. And, Wichita's down, but playing there is always challenging. And so, I don't think there's a let up in this league right now, which I don't think you could have said at this point a year ago.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think now this year, they could potentially be a 3-bid league. But your point about the conference image, the Big Ten can cannibalize themselves, but the American cannot. It is such a bad double standard.
Let's face it, it's a small part of why like UCF is leaving. Like it's everyone who's been in this league knows that the quality is there, but the perception of the quality of it has been flawed. And so, I think a lot of people have tried to change that tune very publicly in all the sports over the years, and it just hasn't sunk in. And so, Houston's the #1 team in the nation, and they're in this league. ESPN just did their little poll where everyone picked them to be the national champion this year. Like they're that level good. The group behind them is pretty dang solid as well. And the two teams meeting Saturday here in New Orleans are part of that group. When the national picture starts to clear up about just what's behind Houston here is when teams are really going to start taking off. And hopefully that happens because this league, I think, is too good to be a 2-bid league again this year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You guys did Mike Oresco a big solid with a New Year's 6 win because I think that really does give him some great confidence moving forward with the changes that are taking place. I know we talked about this on the last show. But you guys giving him something for the mantle as the conference moves forward is huge.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt to that, and that's not a slight to UCF leaving because they did their part for this league, and they've got a New Year's 6 win under their belt, another appearance, and so. But yeah, I would imagine, I've not spoken to Commissioner Oresco or anything like that, but I would imagine he was thrilled with the fact that a member who is staying in the league was the representative in the New Year's 6 and also won the game. Like, I mean, I'm sure he is very happy about that. And, where that puts the American moving forward, it's definitely going to take a step back on the gridiron, even with, UTSA coming in. They're really, really good.
Yep.
And then you got a couple teams that, made some bowl games this year, kind of surprisingly so, that are coming in the league. But, when you're losing a UCF, a Cincinnati, and a Houston, like that's hard to replace. And so it's going to have to probably be internally with who's going to be sticking around here. And so Tulane's going to carry that torch heading into the fall of 2023. The fact that they can do so with a Cotton Bowl victory in hand, I'm sure the commissioner is pretty overjoyed at that.
Yeah. And, and you could look at it conversely too. I mean, the 3 schools that are leaving, the Big 12 is going to be a different experience for them too. I mean, I think Houston obviously is well prepared from a basketball standpoint, but in football, that's going to be a different tune for UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston. It's not going to be what it was.
Right. And getting to talk with Coach Fritz as the year went on, and Tulane saw all 3 of those teams this year, and one of them twice, obviously. And he was pretty adamant about the 3 programs, or the 3 rosters, or the 3 just overall setups that UCF was probably the best positioned for this jump. Houston's facilities are outstanding, but just all encompassing UCF, like from his mind, with the roster, the makeup, the coaching staff there, the support behind it, everything is probably more poised to make an immediate impact in the Big 12 than maybe the other 2, especially now with Cincinnati changing hands in their coaching spot. And so, like, I think, it might not be, appearing in a conference championship game right away here for a team like UCF, but I think they're in a better spot than maybe the other 2 to make some headway here in the Big 12. And then you're going to lose a couple out of that conference here in however many years Oklahoma and Texas decide to stick around. And you got BYU in there as well coming in, and they are down right now. And so Yeah, I think there's some chances here for UCF to not kind of slink into the middle of the Big 12, but I think they're in a pretty good spot to maybe make some noise here.
It will all be interesting to see as the landscape of college football is definitely fluid. It's
Yes.
definitely something that gives us things to talk about. That's for sure. Well, Cory, of course, the Americans also pretty good with baseball too, and you guys got a program that's outstanding. So we'll get to talk about that down the road.
Yes.
On this show when that time rolls around. And as always, man, I thank you for being on the show. Always appreciate you taking the time.
Always, Jeff. Thank you for allowing me back on your airwaves here. I always enjoy it.
All right.